Brian Maestri here again, assessment of flood risk using the HEC-FDA model for coastal evaluations and using Southwest coastal Louisiana as a case study. Now we're on the last section, which is a risk assessment of the Southwest coastal non-structural alternatives. In this section, we hope to define what non-structural measures are and then the modeling of those non-structural measures using the HEC-FDA model and then the recommendations and results. There was important legislation passed, the Water Resources Development Act, WRDA 2007, and it had two objectives, two priorities, I should say, that are highlighted here. To use the best available economic techniques, including risk and uncertainty. So we moved away from the point estimate to risk and uncertainty ranges, trying to quantify our uncertainty. And then non-structural approaches. And as you can see very much in this presentation, it's a lot been about risk and uncertainty. And as you'll see, non-structural approaches that we've talked a bit about. So non-structural measures defined. I think the two sentences at the top are very telling. Non-structural measures are applied to a structure or its contents that prevent or provide resistance to damage from flooding. Non-structural measures differ from structural measures in that they focus on reducing the consequences of flooding instead of focusing on reducing the probability of flooding. So we're talking about changing the consequences, not the hazard. Typically, you only need the without project H&H for non-structural alternatives. Now, if you're doing, you might have a with project alternative, a levee or something, and you also want to do some non-structural behind it, that would be with project hydraulics being used. But typically, you can just use the without project, so you don't have to have extra modeling because it doesn't affect the probability of flooding. There's two types of non-structural measures, the physical, which we typically think about, elevation of structures, flood proofing, relocation or acquisition, and then there's the non-physical, which is evacuation plans, floodplain mapping, warning systems, improvements there also can reduce the amount of flood damage as people are able to get out of harm's way and this provides also resistance. The physical measures obviously provide resistance to damage from flooding though. So Southwest coastal Louisiana, there was three physical measures that we used: elevating of structures, the flood proofing of non-residential structures, and these localized storm surge risk reduction measures around warehouses. When we started the study, the real question was, how do we aggregate? How do we define? What are we looking at? And we thought, well, maybe we'll organize by reach. But that's all based on H&H. And then we thought by community. But there's urban communities, there's rural communities. We thought about floodplain, but then the entire area is practically in the 100-year floodplain. Then we went to more of a floodplain, a tiered approach. And we started to get some insights and results there that definitely required further investigation, and finally we landed on the 25-year floodplain. Now, how did we get there? Well, we looked at the damages for the entire study area, and you saw there were $474.6 million of damages to almost 52,000 structures. But 70% of those damages were occurring within the 100-year floodplain to about only 16,000 structures. And 85% of those damages in the 100-year floodplain were occurring within the 0 to 25-year floodplain to approximately 5,000 structures. So how are we defining floodplain? Any structure with a first floor elevation less than the stage associated with that probability event, a 25-year event. So if you had a first floor elevation less than that, that was the aggregation method. You were in that floodplain. So that became the focus of our economic evaluation. And so now how do we then incorporate the model and actually model all this? Well, HEC has a model, the HEC-FDA model, that allows you to do many things. You just got to uncover how to do it. And one of the things it did it was through modules, module assignment. So in the menu in a drop down, there's a module assignment. And you see the plan here is under without project. And We're going to use modules under without project and different ones under with project in order to implement this. So let's go down and look at the structure records. Here's a structure record for one structure. It has a unique ID number, and you can see it's worth $99,810, and because it's in thousands, and the first floor stage is 8.36. Well, there's a module name, and it says no raise. So that's the elevation of it. We found that structure was flooding. It was getting flood damages at different probability events. So we said we're going to raise it up to the future condition 100-year elevation or stage plus 1 foot. So that required raising this structure about 4 feet. As you can see in the second structure record, it's at the first floor elevation is 12.4 feet. So there's a different ID number. You can't have the same ID number. Otherwise, the program will only read the first and never the second. It doesn't know it exists. So we put an R in to make it slightly different. Got a different first floor stage. And notice the module name is now different. In the year 2025, our base year, we have it under raise. So when we run this alternative under without project, it reads base because there's some structures that won't get changed at all. So they have a base for their module name. And then we wanted to read the structures with a module name under without project that have no raise because that is the actual elevation that it is currently, and at least in the base year. And so it runs it at 8.36 first floor elevation, the stages against it, and it produces damages. You only allow one inventory, so how do we do this? So through this modules, then under with project, and it's really hard to see this in blue, it says like alternative 1, but it's a non-structural alternative. You still have your base structures that get flooded, but notice now instead of having no raise, what's highlighted? The raise. So it doesn't read the first structure record. It's like it doesn't exist. It only reads the second one for that particular structure. And it's at a higher elevation, so it gets less damages. So you got one damage figure under without project and a lower damage figure under, you have a higher damage figure under without project and a lower damage figure under with project because of the difference in the first floor stage. So that's how it works, and there's different techniques to apply this to flood proofing. You got to manipulate the depth damage relationship. It's done differently. I'm not going to go through that right now, but I want to give you a feel for how we implemented this and modeled non-structural measures. There's going to be a non-structural training course in the summertime in which we'll go through the specifics of all the different type of physical non-structural measures there are and how we can model that. So calculating expected annual damages using non-structural measures is pretty much the same as under for structural measures. But what you'll see is that the stage damage relationship is lower because at all the different probability events, the structures may be at for example, if they were elevated at the first floor is lower, so there's less damages taking place at all the stages. The stage probability relationship is unchanged. And so in red, when we do our damage probability, as you can see in red, this is without project. That will give you a higher damage number than under the with non-structural, where it's lower because there's lower damages at these stages. And when you incorporate that, then you've got a higher damages without, lower damages with, and that means you have benefits. So the results are shown, as you can see in this little display here. Under you see the without project damages of $72,000. With project, there's still, and here's the with, there's $9,000 still taking place, so there's $63,000. And notice you have a range. There's a 75%. Your benefits are higher than approximately $39,000. There's a 50% chance that it's greater than $60,000, and there's only a 25% chance it's greater than $83,000. So this is incorporating the uncertainty. And you notice we show our results for an alternative, not for individual structures. And that comes from the latest planning bulletin 2019-03, which was put out right at the end of 2018, and it's further clarification of existing policy for USC participation in non-structural flood risk management and coastal storm risk management measures. And one of those says that we don't do things at the individual structure level. Instead, we look at and we produce results in the aggregate. We don't really just protect one structure. We protect groups of structures. So all that is in that outline, and again, there'll be a lot more about non-structural if you sign up for that course in the summertime. So to review our economics, without project damages minus with project damages gives you your NED benefits. So now that we have the benefits, one of the other things we did that the Southwest Coastal uses, I went and performed some interviews with local shoring companies in the New Orleans area following Hurricane Katrina. And as you can see, these are for residential type structures: 1-story slab, 2-story slab, 1-story pier foundation, 2-story pier pile foundation, and mobile homes. And I got from the experts based on how high you raise the structure, what is the cost per square foot of elevating a structure? And I noticed I got a minimum, and most likely and a maximum for these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different residential structure types. So we knew the square footage of the structure from my inventory, and we were able to multiply it by these costs per square foot of elevation to get a total cost of elevating the structure. So then we incorporated other costs that would go along with it, legal cost and any maintenance, to come up with a total cost and make it on an average annual basis and compare it to the benefits. So the total benefits minus the total cost give you your net benefits. If your benefits are greater than the cost, then your net benefits are positive. Now, what we usually talk about is a BC ratio. The total benefits divided by the total cost is the benefit to cost ratio. And if the benefits exceed the cost, it's 2 to 1, then you got a BC greater than 1 or greater, and that means that is economically justified. So the recommended plan for Southwest Coastal would focus on properties exposed to the highest flood risk in the study area, defined as the 25-year floodplain. Some of the structures we saw, that if you saw there was like 5,000, now there's 4,000 structures, because some of the structures we determined that the most likely future for them was there was going to be some type of non-structural measure applied to them locally before we got to them. So 1,000 structures fell out. So we estimated the cost of that. It was almost, and this is in FY15 price levels, it was $900 billion, practically $1 billion. And relative to the benefits we had a benefit to cost ratio of 5.6 to 1. Our average annual net benefits were positive, and that was recommended and went before the Civil Works Board and got approved. And now the study is in the PED phase, the pre-construction engineering and design stage. And we can talk about that story at another presentation. But that's where the study is now, and that's where Southwest Coastal, as a case study, shows you that it ended up being a non-structural recommendation, and the HEC model was able to take us all the way to the finish line. Just to go back and finish up on the CAJUN, this area, we got our CAJUN coach, Ed Ogeron. He's the guy who says, "Go Tigers!" He won the national championship 2014. This past year, not so good. He was 500. Joe Burrow, he's now a quarterback with the Cincinnati Bengals in the NFL. He led LSU to a national championship in 2014, and on senior night, the last home game for LSU, Joe Burrow came out wearing this uniform, making him an honorary Cajun, Burrow. Spelled differently, but that's the way the Cajuns would spell Burrow. Just to let you know, in New Orleans, we got Zion Williamson, a #1 draft pick of the Pelicans, so we're hoping our basketball team will do well. And that's really all I had. If this was in class, I would be taking questions, but since I can't do that, I'll show you, I love economics, and I hope I gave you some appreciation for economics, and I hope you enjoyed the Southwest Coastal Louisiana case study, and I hope it was useful for you. Brian Maestri here. Nice to have you there. Thank you.